Welcome to the first ever live recording of the Next Best Thing podcast. Y'all, I'm so happy we are here together. I'm so happy. I think all of this is working. Can you hear me? Can you see me? Let me know in the chat. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday morning with us. This is a timely conversation. It's a real important conversation. Again, I'm so glad that all of us are here. My name's Andrea Cline-Thomas. For those of you who are new here, I am the host of, again, the Next Best Thing podcast, where my assignment is to help you live the life that you design instead of choosing a life you think you have to settle for. Let these conversations be your guide. Great. Vanessa and Ramla said you can hear and you can see me. Okay, we are cooking with gas then. For my OGs, thank you for coming back. Welcome back. I'm so happy that you're here and that we're doing this journey together. For people who are new, welcome. In this podcast, I always say over here in these parts, when we say we are here to help you live the life that you design instead of choosing a life you think you have to settle for, it is not just a slogan or a catchphrase. It is a state of being. I truly believe that all of us can design the life that we want. It might take a little bit more elbow grease. It might take a little bit more strategy. But we don't just have to take what we are given. So this is episode 96, which means that there are a lot of other episodes you can check out after this one is done. And it's just my pleasure to be here with you. And I'd love to have you, I'd love to join you on this journey. All right. So we are doing this live conversation so we can chat. So please ask your questions. This is super informal. We're here to have a good time. The goal is for you to walk away with tangible steps, things that you can do today to change the trajectory of your life. As we always say, to get you from where you are to where you want to be. So for everyone, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Not only will it make sure that you never miss another conversation, it will help your girl out because we are trying to get this goodness in a world with a lot of negativity. We're trying to get goodness out there. So hitting subscribe is really, really helpful to this platform. It's helpful to getting a lot of other people to discover this content so it can help them out. Also, this is not just a podcast. It is a community where if you want more hands-on help on your journey, I'm here to do that with you. And so we have a member community. You can just join the wait list. If you go to the show description, the link is actually right there. The wait list enrollment will begin on Monday. So go ahead and sign up for the waitlist now so you can go ahead and on Monday, you'll get an email to enroll in the community. We're having a good time over there. People are making progress. People in our community are here with us today. They are making such great progress. So I'd love, again, to be with you in that way. So just go to the show description for a link. All right. Let's go ahead. I think that we've dealt with all the housekeeping. All right. Now for the conversation. So I want to start it this way. I saw this morning, and it's this LinkedIn Workforce Confidence Survey. And over here on the left-hand side, that's April of 2020. So, and you see all the way on the right where it says plus 10, that is now. So active job seekers, their confidence in finding and keeping jobs is at pandemic lows. So basically, folks, when they think about like their opportunity, the possibilities for them, it's the same way they thought about it in April of 2020 when everything was shut down. That is not a good place to be. And that's why we're having this conversation today. I want to introduce you to our amazing guest. Alisia Gill is a former chief people officer and economist. Alisia spent her career studying how professionals make these key life decisions and why even the most successful people can find themselves at a crossroads. The answer, she says, isn't in external validation or the next promotion. It's in knowing who you are, what you need, and how to align your career accordingly. So I'm so excited to have Alisia join us here today. So, hey, Alisia. Oh, I think I've got you on mute
this
here.
Saturday.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining us. And I really want to start there, Alicia, is just really with the numbers. I want you to put on your economist hat, as we begin this conversation. How do we make sense of this economy? What is really going on?
It is really complicated. I think that it can be frustrating because we see that some of the people we know, sometimes it's us, are announcing that we have been laid off. We read the headlines and we see this company is laying off, that company is laying off. But at the same time, we're seeing some data that doesn't necessarily marry that. This doesn't seem to be fitting. So, for example, the unemployment rate is 4.2%. Well, it's been around 4% for the past 12 months, and 4% hasn't necessarily been a horrible number. Pre-pandemic, it's been 4%. So you kind of go, how could that be possible when my experience is different? That's official government numbers. And then you kind of go, well, it's because of my age, right? Maybe it's because I'm older. But then you look at the data for that, people between the ages of 45 and 65, and it says the unemployment rate is even lower. It's sort of 3%, and you go, how can this be, right? And then you realize that, well, there are some other things that do speak to me. I see that the length of time that people who are unemployed is getting longer, right? So right now it's about 26 weeks on average, right? That is not a small number. And people are really feeling that. And the number of people, and again, I'm going with official data, so this is not what LinkedIn and other people say, but the number of people who have been looking for jobs for more than 27 weeks is going up. It's about a quarter of the people who are looking. So this is not awesome. The other thing that I should point out is that unemployment data only includes people who are actively looking. And we know there are some people who have given up, right? So they're not even in the data. Now, I also do want to point out that when we look at people who are unemployed, I suppose it won't be surprising to learn that about half of the people who are unemployed are people who have been laid off. But even as I say that, when you look at national data, the percentage of layoffs in the country is not a huge number. It's like 1%, right? So it becomes very, very difficult to try to make heads or tails of what's going on. And I think one of the things we have to consider is, most of us here are white collar workers, right? We went to college, we went to grad school, we played by the rules, and the thought process was we quote unquote deserve to do well, we deserve job stability, we deserve all kinds of things. And we've worked really hard. And so, where is it? So, how is it that we could arrive at this moment and find that the opportunities aren't necessarily there for us? Because when you dig deep, you start to see, well, when you look at senior managers or middle managers, the job growth there, the number of people who have been hired there, the number of job openings there has gone down significantly since 2022, for example, right? So in some cases, it's down 30%, 40%. And that is consistent with what we're seeing in the news. So some people are calling that, a white collar recession, or, that as the case may be. And, now what do we do? What do we do? And I'll share one other thing that might be a little annoying, that is important, that I just want to make sure you're set up to understand this, is that, 3 million people a month quit their jobs, right? So it's not as if everybody is having the same experience, and 5 million people a month are hired, right? So I want to put out there that there is some hope, but it might require us to change where we show up in the labor market. And that might be a hard pill for us to swallow. So I wanted to provide a little bit of context so that we kind of understand the broader market and the experience that we are having.
Absolutely. And that's a perfect segue because you have some hard truths, right? And at first of it, like putting a pin in the idea that when we came up into the job market, millennials, mainly Gen Xers, we were told you do these specific things, check the boxes, and you live happily ever after. And while we were in the workforce, everything shifted. And so the whole idea of like we just have to approach the workforce differently is what I want us to talk about, what that looks like right now, and framing it in terms of things that you were calling your hard truths. The first one is you are your digital reputation and how you show up in real life. What does that mean?
Well, a lot of people in their 40s and 50s didn't have to look for jobs the way that we have to look for jobs now, right? Many of us got jobs through people we knew. It was a thing for recruiters to call you. You kind of got used to that. And, it's pretty, simple, not easy, but, the number of things that you had to do, wasn't that complex. And, I shouldn't forget networking. That's also very important. But now we have this extra piece of, social media, and LinkedIn is a thing. And as we think about the people who have a role to play in our ability to get a job, they're looking at our digital footprint. A lot of us don't like that. A lot of people I talk to, they resent that. They feel that it shouldn't be necessary. And because they resent it and feel like it shouldn't be necessary, they don't show up well. These are the people who don't have pictures up there. These are the people who have the bare minimum of a LinkedIn profile filled out. Well, I'll tell you that in the recruiter world, they are mostly looking on LinkedIn. Sometimes they're prospecting for people on LinkedIn, or people who have applied. They kind of look and see, well, what's going on with these people? And you have to show up as your best self, because there's pleasing yourself and what the market requires. And the reality is the market requires you to have a non-crazy LinkedIn profile, right? We're in the spirit of doing what's going to work. So we have to accept that hard truth that that's where we are. We have to show up in a way that is going to be compelling so that we are given consideration.
And that's the thing, is everybody in the community knows, the Next Best Thing community knows that I talk about being on LinkedIn all the time. I beat that drum. I know it's uncomfortable for people, but it's not enough to just have a profile. You also have to participate. It's not enough to go on LinkedIn and use it as a means to just apply for a job. You also have to, like, what do you want to be known for? Why should somebody choose you? Like, what is your lane? What is your area of expertise? It's not just putting your resume on there is just one step, but like, who are you? Like, why should you stand out? And I have made money from LinkedIn. I have made money, and just because of my participation from LinkedIn, where people have said, hey, can you come and help me do this thing and that thing? So LinkedIn has definitely been an absolute game changer for me.
Yeah. And also one of the things we have to do is be relevant, right? So you have to indicate that, yeah, I understand that the world is different and I can be competitive here, and I kind of get it. And if you don't show up that way digitally, they're kind of like, if you can't even get how important LinkedIn is for your, how you show up, maybe you are old school in the way that you work. Maybe you're old school in other ways, and that are not consistent with what we're looking for in this opportunity right now. Because a lot of the people who will be hiring Gen Xers or people in their 40s and 50s are millennials. And they don't understand that at all, right? You're not with it. You have to act like we are in 2025 and that there are specific requirements for 2025, particularly for people who are concerned with ageism, which is a real thing. But let's not engage in self-inflicted wounds, right? You can't change your age, but you don't show up very well or as a relevant person who understands where the times are if you don't behave in that way. And the minimum thing you need to do is make sure that you're showing up in an effective way digitally.
And another thing to add there, I think, is like, for me, coming from news, what I was covering wasn't necessarily everything that I wanted to be known for. So if you Googled me, you'd get all of my stories about shootings and murders and kidnappings and all of that. But that's not necessarily what I wanted to be known for. And so I had to be very intentional. And I wasn't. I didn't know this is what I was doing at the time. I wouldn't have framed it this way at the time, but like what I needed to be talking about more was what I was doing in the community, my speaking engagements. If I got to do the story that I was really like deep in, then I wanted to have some counterbalance to that. And so I wasn't as active on LinkedIn as I needed to be. Like, this is my emphasis about this comes from making the mistake, right? And then having to build momentum, because it's not just over time. You don't just post once and say, oh, then the floodgates open. It's just building the momentum over time. But now people come to me and they're like, oh, you have that podcast, or oh, I see your clips, or and they don't even necessarily have to engage with your content to be watching. And oftentimes the opportunities come from not with the people who are engaging with my content. It's usually people who actually have not engaged with my content, but then they get in my DMs,
Mhm.
and it's changed the trajectory. I want to go to the next one. And I want to hold people's hands while I say this, okay? Because this is a tough one, Alicia, that you have here. The future doesn't care about what you've done. Before folks are outraged, what does that mean?
It means that when you are in your 40s and 50s, you have decades of experiences and wins and things that you have done. And some of them are very specific to that moment in time. When you're looking for an opportunity that is before you need to indicate the relevance of the things in your past for the future and for the job that is in front of you. It can be very easy because of the things you're proud of to sort of cram all that in because you want the person who's giving you consideration to know all of these things. But it's also true that not everything that you're proud of, not everything that's awesome back there is relevant to them. An interview is about telling the story of you, right? And so it's also an opportunity because you don't have all the time in the world to be discerning as you're thinking about what are the things I want to share, right? Everything you have ever done is not worth sharing. Everything that you have ever done is not something they actually care about, right? In leadership, and many of us want to, aspire to leadership or continue to be in leadership, is being able to read the room and understand what's important right now. So I like to say you have to curate what it is you say. You have to curate and make some decisions and understand what are they looking for, and what are the things that I can say that are going to be relevant. I don't want to start talking about things that this hiring manager has never even heard of, right? That's not impressive. That's more like, what are you talking about? I used to be a chief people officer, and I had these people sitting in front of me, and I'm saying to myself, what in fact are they talking about? I guess what they're saying is great. They're telling me it is. A, I don't know what it is. And B, in the limited time that we have, why would they make a choice to talk about that? So for people who are in the job market, in some cases for, the first time in a very long time, it's very important to be cognizant of the fact that not everything that you have achieved is relevant anymore. You got to figure out what are the things that are. And I don't say it to hurt your feelings, and I don't say it because those things don't matter. They're very important to you. Just because they're important to you and they're things to be proud of doesn't mean they're important for the conversation that you're having.
So I want to put a pin in the whole idea of telling your story, your career story. Um, what does that look like? What's the difference between kind of highlighting your resume and telling your career story in a relevant way?
Yeah, well, one of the things that's frustrating is when people, I mean, you're here, like when I'm interviewing, you're right here. I already have your resume, right? I read it, I prepared. I'm interested in you as a person, particularly when we're at senior levels. If we have to tell the story of us, why did we make those decisions? They're wanting to understand what are they looking for? What are the choices they have made? And how does that result in them arriving right here? Because if what they're doing right here is very, very different, then you need to explain to me why. Or if it's consistent with what you've done, why are you interested in this particular opportunity? And if you're a leader, I'm calling upon you to understand the strategy. I'm calling on you to be an excellent communicator. I'm calling on you to be able to talk to your team and rally the team and all of these things that require what? Storytelling, right? Just in some matters, it requires storytelling. So if you're unable to really convey who you are as a person, in addition to all the jobs that you've had, then I'm kind of wondering how does this all hang together? It's so competitive out there. People don't have time to be trying to understand the relevance of what you're saying to me and what I saw on your resume. And they also don't want you to sit there and recite the resume. You are a leader. You need to already know that it's important for people to understand you as a person, because that tells me how you communicate. It tells me how you determine what's the most important to say, and your ability to read the room. And the easiest way to do that is by telling a story. And I would be, when I was a head of HR, I was always more interested in the people who knew how to do that than people who just recited something I already saw and talked about a bunch of stuff that wasn't really relevant for the conversation we were having.
So just a nugget that people might not get the signal in the interview that, hey, this is not kind of where we want to go, but just kind of a behind the scenes look about how people are being assessed in that interview process.
Yeah.
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 So your third one is that you talked about it a little bit at the beginning, that people are getting hired. Despite the economy, despite what's happening, people are still getting hired. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. Well, 5 million people a month in this country are getting hired, right? Now, it's true that that doesn't necessarily mean that those people are at the levels that we are at, because we know middle management and senior management are challenged. But there is a need for talent. So I am very reality based, right? Here are those two pieces. Not a lot of middle management senior jobs are out there in terms of openings and hirings. Not zero, right? Obviously it's not zero. People are getting those jobs. We see it in our friends and our colleagues. We see it in our LinkedIn feeds. I want to let you know I just got this job. Yes, that's absolutely happening. But when we look more broadly, if all we do is focus on trying to get the job that we're seeing in our feed and the job that we had, we're doing ourselves a disservice. We're doing ourselves a disservice, because I just told you, and you're seeing that a lot of those jobs don't exist. And if you're in your 40s and 50s, ageism is a thing. You may not get it, right? So it's very important, considering how long people in the job market, to be open to what another opportunity for you could look like. And I'll add to that, if you really do want to gun for the job you had before, and I'm not saying you won't get it, but if you want to land and not be one of these people who's been in the job market for a very long time, embrace the idea that this might be a time to consider a just for now job. A just for now job. Because nowadays people understand that.
Yeah,
And
and
there are things you can get from that just for now job that will help you move forward.
yeah, that's the next one actually for the just for now job. So let's talk about how to figure out what we're optimizing for. Just like how do we make that broaden our perspective about what opportunity can look like for us?
Yeah, that's a good one, because I used to say to people, and people say, "Why are you saying that?" Because it's true. You employees and you have to optimize for your own situation. And a lot of people who are in mid-career, they're very used to being stapled to their employer, right? I'm going to do all the things and I'm going to get rewarded financially. I'm going to get rewarded with this. And I'm very loyal to the company. And good for you. And you're also a person. And when people, you've got to figure out what's going to make sense for you. What we're seeing is that people are getting laid off. People say to me, well, should I be worried about getting laid off? And I say, maybe, right? Because it's always been true that you could get laid off. You could be a high performer and get laid off. I've heard about people who it was dangled in front of them that they should consider doing a job overseas to lead a specific function. 3 weeks later, they were laid off, right? So it's very important to optimize for what you need and be ready at any given time to pivot, because you may need to do that. I'm not saying don't take your job seriously. Don't be, doing the things you need to do to support your current employer if you're employed. But you always need to make sure that you understand, if you were to leave, are you set up to be successful, right? You have to optimize for your situation, because certainly the company or an organization is optimizing for theirs. And at any given moment, that may or may not include you, right? So if the job at some point stops meeting your needs, whatever they may be, monetary, or they're no longer in concert with your values, or they're no longer really appreciating some of the best strengths that you're bringing to the table, you start noticing these things. You have to say to yourself, well, that's a big part of my personal value proposition. And if that can't be appreciated or met here, maybe I need to be thinking about the next step for me. Maybe you'll be one of those 3 million people a month who decides they're going to move on. But you should always be thinking about that. This is a very dynamic market. It's evolving. I think companies are trying to figure out how they want to approach things. You need to be thinking about it too. You just can't be in a business as usual mode, because you could find yourself in a very hard place if you do that.
And I also want to just highlight that oftentimes, as we're talking about this, we're talking about it like preparing for the layoff, like what will happen. But we can also be on offense and say, life changes, our values change. Let's be on the offensive so we can have a life that meets our needs too. So, like for me, at the beginning of my career, working holidays and doing all of that stuff and missing family events didn't matter a whole lot to me. It wasn't a big deal. And it was just like the paying my dues to work my way up the ladder. But at a certain point, it was a big deal. And it started to really aggravate me. And I did not like that, or having the conversations about like small incremental raises, or picking up my life and moving from city to city and to city. That's what I had to do to get big raises, exponential raises over time. But then when I didn't want to, move myself every 2-3 years anymore. And then I also didn't want to have conversations about these, single digit raises. I had to remove myself from that situation, as opposed to expecting this company to be what it was never designed to be. And I hear that a lot from folks who want flexibility in a rigid system. Like that system was never designed to hold that type of experience. So you have to go someplace else so you don't have to compromise it within yourself. And it's cool. It's not bad blood. It's not like, torching the place when you leave type of thing, scorched earth. It's just, hey, my needs change. My values change. It was okay at this point. But, for people who become parents, for people who have to care for a loved one, for people who just want something different because they just feel like it. Like, it's okay. It's just creating the habits to like be on offense.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important to point out. People in their 40s and 50s are not used to that. We weren't trained up with that.
But
We were
even the
trained to be
30s too.
loyal. Well, 30s too.
Yeah.
We weren't trained up for that. We're here. We're going to do the best that we can, and this and that, and we don't take our own personal needs and preferences into consideration because we weren't rewarded for doing that. And sometimes you were dinged. So it was almost like you had to be brave, to express a preference. I remember the first time I was interacting with a millennial who expressed a preference. It kind of shocked me because that wasn't a thing that we did. We would move heaven and earth to do what we were told to do. In my particular case, I did not advocate for myself. And in many cases, in some sense, what you're talking about is advocating for yourself, um, to the point where I did everything they wanted me to do and it was at cross purposes with who I was as a person. Even though I was a top performer, I almost had a nervous breakdown behind that. And I finally had to say, look, they don't get to decide my mental health. And honestly, if I had been brave enough to express my preferences in a very confident way, I might have been able to get them met, right? And if I weren't able to get them met, maybe that would have been a time to think about where I should go. I want to remind all of you that unless you plan to retire from your current employer, you're going to leave anyway, right? So it's just a question of what time and on whose terms and who's going to decide it, right? Your employer could lay you off, and that's a decision. Or you could say, now is time for me. I was able to accomplish the following. I was able to learn the following. And, maybe now is the time for me to move on. It could have been 5 years from now, but maybe it should be 3 months from now, right? So we always need to be thinking about what our situation is and where we should go. It's not bad to determine that you really need to move on. It's not. It's being a grown up. It's sort of taking command of your own career, which, by the way, everybody respects. At this particular point in time, the average tenure in a job has gone down very low. It's just a couple of years. And we were talking before that it used to be that if you were at a job for less than 2 years, that was something that you had to figure out how to explain, right?
Mhm.
It was considered a ding. You're not loyal. You're not staying long enough to learn. You're not staying long enough to have an impact. And the barriers to leaving and the way that it's perceived, it's very different. And we need to act like that's true. It's very different. You're not seen as a job hopper. You're seen as somebody who is intelligently making decisions about where they're wanting to go, which is why it's very important to be able to tell your story.
Mhm. And, we have said a lot, and so, again, a reminder that this is a conversation with y'all too. So go ahead and put in the chat your questions, so we can go ahead, and get it answered. But to that end of what you, said at the last thing that you said, it got me thinking about, like, I didn't work this hard to then have less and less of a voice later on. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't work this hard. I didn't check these boxes. I didn't create this resume to then be silent about it, to not have agency, to still continue doing what other people just tell me to do, even if it doesn't align with my needs. Like, you're not working this hard to have that be the outcome. And so, like, you've earned the right. I don't think somebody just getting into the workforce, although, I do think that, Gen Z kind of gets a bad rap. Because but they were raised by Gen Xers, right? So they were like they were raised by the rule followers, right? Like, and and here we go. Here's what we have. I do think that
Yeah.
you need to build an expertise. I do think you have to have something that's leveraged, that you can leverage. I do think that you have to have a skill that's like marketable, that is actually desired in the workforce. But when you have done that, then you should get a little bit of wiggle room, right? Like, as opposed to continuing to be rigid, I think you've earned the right to have some wiggle room.
Right. And, I'll even go further. You deserve it as a person, right? You have to be determining what you want your career and path to look like. And as we get older, a lot of us are starting to think about legacy, you know, and we look back on our career, and do we want to just say, well, I hopped to this and I hopped to that, and I had a fabulous career. Like, is that what we want it to be? Or do we want to kind of say, you know what, how do I want to show up really? You know, forget about what the job is called. Like, what kind of impact do I want to be able to say I made, right? I want to be able to say, you know what, I was really clear on what I needed. I thought actually about what I needed, not what job I needed, not what promotion I needed, but what did I need as a person? What did I need as a professional? What kind of expectations do I have of my employer? Did I have any? Or was I just glad I got the job? Right? What are the things that are amazing about me? And how can I put myself in a place where those things are appreciated and I have an opportunity to do those things? And what are my values? Yeah, a lot of times people will put their values very at the very, very bottom. They say, because the title is great, the salary is great. Well, maybe I'm not in accordance with this company, but whatever, because I've got these other things. But no, you are the whole thing. You don't want to look back and say, you know what, I just let my values go. Would you be proud of that? Would you suggest that somebody you loved or a friend of yours do that? I don't think that you would do that, right? So you need to ensure that you are getting what you need, whatever that means and whatever that looks like. And now that we're moving into a space where you're going to have to be thinking and be more open-minded as to where you're going to show up, now is an opportunity to kind of say, what are those things? Because those can influence the new spaces in which I find myself. And maybe I won't feel like it's a failure to move from what I had before, because what I'm seeking now and what I'm achieving now are things that are more in concert with my needs and my personal requirements. And wouldn't that be amazing?
Absolutely. The last hard truth, the fifth one, is we're going to have to be uncomfortable. Talk about the discomfort.
So this sucks.
It sucks. It just sucks.
Let's just say it. It
Yeah.
does suck. This is screwing with, and for many of us, it's screwing with our identity. And there's nothing more profound and scary than something messing with your identity. And you need to honor that. It's just true. But understand that you are more than the sum of all the accomplishments that you've had in the past. There is an opportunity for you to recraft who you are and set it up so that you're successful on your own terms, right? You have the ability to do that. And so I think a mindset shift is required. It's going to be required to navigate this complicated job market, this very highly competitive job market. So the longer you get religion about the fact that you've got to change your mindset, the longer you're going to be in this job market. There's a reason why people have been in the market as long as they have. It's not just because there aren't as many openings as there were in the types of jobs they wanted to have before. A lot of it is mindset and getting over and grieving the fact that, yes, you don't have those things anymore. Yeah. But what can your future look like? You know, as Gen Xers, we sort of had to pivot and sort of roll with it because of what the society required or employers required. But what if you were going to roll with it and center yourself and not worry about what people think or what people say or the names of things? How do you want to show up? What do you want to do? What kind of work will you be proud of, regardless of the title? And you'll also release some of the salary recommendations. I'm not saying you need to go out there and make 10% of what you did, right? I'm saying that you have to have an open aperture as to how you can show up successfully. And by the way, from a networking perspective, which is going to be critical to all of this, you must network. It's going to be easier for people to help you if you don't go in there talking about all the things you did before, but rather we're able to sort of tell your story to them in a way that they can kind of go, well, I don't, I'm not somebody who knew a ton about what you did before, but what you're describing in terms of the things that you're really good at and that you like to do, that sounds a little bit like this other job that we have in the company. Maybe I should set you up to talk with Mary, right? And now we're navigating towards jobs that are aligned with who you are versus networking with somebody where you just say, I was a chief marketing officer. I'm looking for a chief marketing officer job. Maybe that person isn't in marketing. Maybe they know nothing about it. But if that's all you talk about versus the broader who you are, they may say, sorry, I don't know anyone in marketing. And then the meeting is over and everybody was cordial. But now you've missed out on an opportunity and you don't even know you missed out on it. And imagine you keep doing that over and over again, knowing or somehow believing that networking matters. How are you going to set yourself up for success? So, whatever it's going to take, you have to embrace the fact that you're going to have to do things differently. And if that means you need to lean on your friends or the people who care about you, your colleagues, if you have to, sort of get your mind around this from a mental health perspective, which is not nothing, and I honor that because it's real. But if you want to be successful in this very competitive, scary market, you simply have to embrace that you have to show up differently and be okay with that because now you can center yourself.
I want to ask folks which one of the things that we've talked about. We'll summarize it here in a second, but which one is resonated the most with you, or is going to be the hardest thing for you to address? If you could put that in the chat, I'd really appreciate it. And just in terms of like leaning into telling your story, when I transitioned, people would say, "Well, what do you want?" And I didn't know. I don't know. But that's like not a good thing to say. Like, I don't know. But that's how I walk. I don't know because
Yeah.
I just didn't have enough data. I had done this thing. I had said I wanted to be a reporter when I was 17, and everything that I did was to make this childhood dream a reality. So then, I was in it for more than 15 years, but then if you count college, grad school, last year of high school, like everything, my whole life was about making this dream a reality, right? And so once I came to the moment of saying, well, I want to do something different, I didn't even have the data points to determine what that different was. However, what I did know was how to tell a story. Like I broke down what my skills were. So I didn't have a title, but I could tell you about myself. And then people bought into me, and so what happened was that people were presenting opportunities to me of like, hey, I mean, literally, like when I tell you my friends saved me from myself because I had no clue what was going on. I had one friend who was like, I want you to do business development. I didn't know what that meant. I have no clue. She had a product and she wanted me to help her, like connect her to an audience better and help her with her storytelling. I was like, great. I could do that. I could tell a
Yeah.
story. I could figure that out, and I could figure out the rest. And I say all that to say is that it's not about having all the answers, but it's all about like knowing who you are, and you might not even know like how you want to show up, but like start talking about who you are, like what lights you up, what makes you special, and then people will create like link you to think, oh, I think you should meet this person. I think you should meet. That's the only way I've made money. It's not from brilliance. It's not from strat. Like, oh, you had all this strat. No, I was just really clear about who I am and like what I could bring to the table. And I gave myself the space for it to look any kind of way. And I wasn't like caught up with, oh, you used to be on TV and now you're not on TV. So that means that you kind of took a step back or you took a step down or you couldn't hang. I mean, like in the industry, they might not say it out loud, but those are the whispers, like, oh, she went crazy or whatever. But it just is like, I told somebody the other day, just because you don't know what the opportunity could be doesn't mean that the opportunity doesn't exist.
Right.
We have folks saying that what's resonated with them is sharing the story of you in the present versus sharing what you did before. I think that's a really key point. Another person said, what resonated the most with me, what do you want to be known for? And you must change your mindset. So let's
Yeah.
go ahead. I do want to summarize these hard truths again. You are your digital reputation and how you show up in real life. Guys, I don't know of any person that doesn't Google somebody. Like every time we got the notice that we have a new employee coming, everybody squirreled away and started Googling them and then started calling their friends. Oh, they worked at this company. I have a friend at that company. Who are they? Who are they? So your reputation matters. And the question is not even just being mindful of what you put online, but does anything show up at all? Are you even participating in your narrative? That's a big question. Secondly, the future doesn't care about what you've done. The future is not thinking about the past, it's building on the past. 3, people are getting hired despite the difficulties in the job market, despite the economy, people are getting hired. Consider just for now jobs. This is not about, I always say, we're not getting the gold clock. This is not about, okay, I have this one job and then I'll sail off into the sunset. We don't have a sunset anymore. Like we choose our sunset, right? Just for now is good enough. Is one just for, that's why it's called the next best thing, not your future plan. It's one next best thing. When that's no longer the best, you choose your next best thing. And then you keep choosing your next best thing. And it will be uncomfortable. This sucks. It sucks. And there's no other two ways. There aren't two ways about it. So I really want to talk about this concept of time and when is the best time to do this. When is the best time to start doing this work and start plugging away? Because I think that that's also where we have a disconnect.
The best time is a year ago.
What's the second best time?
The best time was a year ago. Since that's not an option, the best time is now. You have, even if you feel like you're sitting in job security, maybe, I don't know. But I don't think it's helpful to act like there isn't a scenario in which case that wouldn't be true, right? So you need to be thinking about, is this job I have right now in alignment with what I want for myself as I enter this next chapter of my life? Is it? If it's not, is it possible to make it be? And that whole notion of make it be is not about just looking at, am I going to get a new title? Am I going to get more money? It's bigger than that. What type of impact do you want to have in the world? And is sitting in that chair in furtherance of you getting towards being that person that you aspire to be and the legacy you want to have? And in order to do that, you certainly have to get introspective. You have to say, forget about what my friends say, forget about what I should be doing based on the degree that I got. In some sense, even forget about some of the things that I've done, because awesome, but like, what could you do now? Because you need to be thinking about how to be in alignment. So consider if you're in alignment now and what you can do to be more in alignment so you can be happier and feel more fulfilled and help us have joy in where you are. But also be prepared to say, you know what? Here are my needs. Like really, really know what are my needs besides title and salary in terms of how I want to be in my family, the lifestyle that I really want to have. It's not necessarily the most money I could possibly come up with, right? You might have a really amazing life right here and all the things you get to come that come along with having right there. And think about, what type of employer do you want to work for? They tell you what they're about by their behavior. Forget about their marketing and all of that stuff. You're showing up and you're finding out based on how you're being treated and how you see other people being treated. And you have to decide if that's good enough for you, because you have your own personal requirements. So do the deep work to figure out what you truly need, to figure out what your strengths really are, to figure out where those strengths can be most used and valued and rewarded, to figure out, God help us, what you're actually interested in. I can't tell you how many people have jobs that they're not even interested in. The example I always give is that, if you're a lawyer and, a lot of lawyers aren't happy, just saying, if
Right.
you were, just saying, the data shows it every year, right? But like, if you're a lawyer and you did it because you're smart and you didn't have a better idea, so you did it and you make a lot of money and it's amazing, kind of. But if you find yourself at 10 p.m. on the 58th floor of your law firm and your light is the only one on and you're working on a bankruptcy brief, you have to say, am I interested in that? Like maybe, like I believe there are people who are really interested in that, but also maybe you're not. And that's an extreme example that I give, but you need to be thinking about what your interests really are, not just what you're capable of doing. So many of you have tons of skills, tons of things you could do, which can make it hard. But the question is, what are your priorities? What are the things that are most important for you? And put yourself in a position where you're doing those things and you're around those things because nobody's going to do that work for you.
Mhm.
And if you want to be able to move to what's going to fit, and I think in this era of our lives, it's not about success, it's about fit. What's going to make you happy and proud? What are you modeling for the people behind you if you're mentoring them or if they're your children or your nieces and nephews? And what is that? If they're just seeing you settle and just run around chasing things that don't matter, then maybe they think that's what they're supposed to do. But I think that's weak. When you're 70 years old and look back, like I say, you don't want to just say, well, I had this job and I just had that job and, I was successful. You want to say, you know what? I was all about innovation. And here are all the ways I was able to do that. Or I'm all about community. And here's all the ways I was able to support the community. And, I had a certain type of skill set and degree, but I decided that I wanted to focus on a nonprofit space. And here are all the things I was able to accomplish, right? So when I talk about mindset, it really is thinking forward and how can you show up differently and have an impact that perhaps you hadn't dreamt of, but that is in alignment with who you are and what you need. And that's how you can take this job market and do it. It's in some ways it's forcing you to do it,
Mhm.
but do it anyway, even if you've convinced yourself that you're not a person who's going to have to experience the job market shifts, that you're just an observer.
Yeah, you always have to be ready to be on offense because it's your one life. And I want to, as we're rounding up here, I want to give people context of why you're so passionate about it. And I didn't know until our pre-call about just your health challenges that you faced and how that put things so much into perspective.
Yeah. So I talked about the nervous breakdown I had because of just following the rules and doing everything, I was supposed to do, which is completely ridiculous. And then I realized, you know what? I did all that stuff trying to prove myself and this and that. And the insight is I'm enough already. You know what I mean? Like I'm enough already. I don't need to keep doing those things. What if I believed that that was true? What if I really started thinking about a lot of the decisions I've made and the way I assess myself is because of my feeling like I had to prove or I had imposter syndrome or people told me that this was required? What if I really believed that I'm enough right now? P.S. You talked about health challenges. I'm also a double cancer survivor. There's no time, right? No, I'm fine now. But the point is, there's no time. We have to make decisions about getting to what's going to make sense and fit for us right now. We're in our 40s and 50s. What, in fact, do we want our next chapter to look like? Because if we're not going to center ourselves now, excuse me, it's probably never going to happen. And everybody can do whatever they want. But I think it's much more powerful to center yourself, put your needs and aspirations and your legacy first, and make decisions in concert with that. Don't make someone force you to do it. Don't wait for a health challenge to get you to do it. Realize that there's no time. Get going. We don't limit the way we spent time before. We did it for reasons, and we do everything happens for a reason. But now as we sit here and we think about the future, it's ours to define. And we can't spend months and months and months and years congratulating ourselves because we realize we should find it and never having done anything about it.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing and perfect segue into our last segment that we do with every guest. I do with every guest on the podcast. It's called the Up Seg segment. ACT, those are my initials. It's all about how to get from where you are to where you want to be. And in this segment, I really want you've already touched on it quite a bit, but how you have defined this as the era of enough. And talk to us about the era of enough and frame it in a way of right now, if somebody's like, yes, I agree. I hear you. I hear what you said. How can I manifest this in my life?
Yes, manifest. Popular word these days.
Yes.
It is.
Or action, not manifest. Action, right.
Action. If you feel like, yes, this is resonating with you, because I say it's a vibe, it's a vibe, it's a move, it's a vibe, it's a moment, and it's a movement. But if all you do is leave here inspired and say yes and do nothing, that's a shame. That's a shame. So step one is get clear on what your personal, forget what other people say. And it's going to be hard to forget about what other people say, by the way. But get clear on who you want to be and how you want to show up and what you want to show up and actually do. Not at the level of job. And she spoke about that. It's not at the level of job. It's what do you want to show up and do? What lights your fire? And what are your needs really? I had a client who said to me, we did this work to uncover needs. And she said, you know what, Alisia, I never had my needs met before. She was a VP and never really considered what her needs were. Step one, get introspective about who you aspire to be in this world, what your values are, what you truly are interested in, what your superpowers are, not just what you know how to do and do it in an amazing way, what you love to do and what your strengths are and what are the reasons why you have been successful in the past. Think about that. And that is the first step to getting some insight as to how much in alignment you are right now and what it's going to take for you to be in alignment in the future. It's easy for me to say, and it's hard to do. But if you don't do it, then you're not going to achieve the life that you deserve to have.
Amen to all of that. Amen to all of that. Alisia, how can we support you? How can we keep in contact with you? I'm going to put in the chat your information.
No, absolutely. So, I call this thing the era of enough, and I've got people all stoked up about it. So you can go to the website, www.theeraofenough.com. So there's a lot of information there, but I've created a container for women who are in their 40s and 50s who say, raising their hand to say, yes, it's enough. I want to now live into a career that fits me. And I want to, as I go forward, make decisions over time that are consistent with being in alignment with myself. So I started the Era of Enough Collective. And it is a space for us to come together and really get, input and use a structured framework to understand how we're going to decide what enough and fit means to us, and all of the decisions and the tools that we can use to ensure that we're over time constantly ensuring that we are in alignment who we're meant to be. So if you're a person who is ready to get started because they believe that they're enough and they don't have time, I told you there's no time. I want everybody to win. But this is for people who are for women who are highly motivated to get going now. Right? So I'm looking for those women who want to do that in a structured, thoughtful, and meaningful way. This is not about going to Barnes & Noble and going to the self-help section and filling out a worksheet. I'm sure a lot of you have done it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being inspired, but more importantly, take that inspiration and do real things about it. So that's what we're on about right now. That's my latest project, and I'm very excited about it.
I'm very excited about it for you as well. Thank you so much for being here, for your passion, for your insight, for like breaking this down for us. Um, you drop so many gems, and I'm going to include it in the newsletter. It's called the Next Nuggets newsletter. Putting that in the chat right now, where I'll summarize this episode, the key takeaways, our hard truths, and how we need to really be thinking about it as we're approaching. Even if you're not looking for a job right now, you are going to be looking for a job or looking for opportunities in the future, and it's just best to kind of get this ingrained within you to commit to these habits now, because you don't want to wait. You don't want to wait until you need it and develop a plan, right when you need it. You develop a plan beforehand, you work that plan, and so that things start coming to you. My whole visualization is like having a plate, and food tastes better when you've got more options, when you got different seasoning on it, right? And so you can't just have like a bland plate of just bland chicken, right? You need some sides, and it's just a better meal. So why don't you just create these habits so you can create more options in your life? So we're going to go ahead and summarize that for you, all the things that we're talking about here in our newsletter. And then also the Next Best Thing community. It was great to see some of our community members here today. Doors will open for those on the wait list on Monday. So you want to go ahead and get on the wait list now, because space is limited. Thank you all. We did it. We did our first live episode. Alisia, it's all because of you, because she was like, why don't we do it live? And I was like, yeah, I don't really know how to do that, but I guess we're going to figure it out. Let's pick a day and figure it out. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for not just giving us the hard truths, but also inspiring us to say, we can do this. It doesn't matter what the external environment is. There is one thing that you said that in our pre-call that I do want to reiterate here. There are two things. You said, give the universe the opportunity to give you what you want.
Yeah.
And then you also said, it's possible to have a great life no matter what the economy is doing.
Yes, that is true. It's once you've done the introspective work and you're like, yes, this is what fit and alignment is for me. It can't be the world's best kept secret. You have to tell people, and they will help you in networking, and it will change how you show up. It'll change how you move. It'll change your energy. So yes, do give the universe an opportunity to give you exactly what you want, because that's amazing. You don't know what's out there. You know what you know. It's a big world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you all so much for spending your Saturday morning with us. And tell your friends to tell a friend. Thank you so much. And we'll see you again next week.